Assalamu alaikum, guys. I hope everyone is well. Bit of a last minute live session. Just decided to do this because there was a few requests for book recommendations and stuff. Although, just to let you guys know, we have our official live that we do once a week tomorrow, inshallah. I've just posted on the community section of the page so you guys can go check that out. Nadeem Ashraf will be joining us tomorrow and Musa Adnan as well, inshallah. So without further ado, I'm just going to sort of share with you some of the books that I've recently been reading or I have read, which I found really beneficial and that I think may be worth recommending. Well, again, they may not appeal to all of you, but nevertheless, inshallah, I'll share some of them. So, Assalamu alaikum wa alaikum salam to everyone that's joining. May Allah bless you all. So, the very first book that I want to share with you guys is now becoming, or is a classic, which is The Divine Reality. I've shared this with you guys many times before as well. It's a book Hamza wrote, Hamza Dortzes. May Allah bless him. And this is actually a phenomenal book. Now, I haven't read this recently, although I intend on reading it or going over some of the sections again, because there's some videos that, inshallah, I'm planning on doing with Sapiens. But it's a brilliant book, brothers and sisters. It's probably the best book. Look, let's put it this way. Sometimes you guys want books on philosophy and, stuff like this. This is an atheism and things like this. If there's only one book you guys read, which is related to the topic of philosophy, atheism, Islam, this is the book. This is the book. If you read this, you would never need to read another book in regards to atheism, philosophical arguments for the existence of God, in regards to arguments atheists make against God. It's all here, and it's very simple, very easy to read, and it's been translated as well. So it's been translated into Arabic, and it's being translated into Urdu, I think, as well. So this I can't recommend more. It's a phenomenal book. I remember first reading it when Hamza was in draft stage, and I was shocked. One of the things that shocked me was because, mashallah, Hamza's use of the English language is quite brilliant. He uses some big words, mashallah. And when I read the book, I was expecting, okay, this is going to be, because normally when you read a book, right, when you read a book by a professor, for example, and they may speak in a way which may be slightly confusing sometimes, but when they write, especially academic type books, man, they give you a headache because it's very hard to understand. It's in German as well, as Henry said, mashallah. Yeah, absolutely, it's in German as well. So yeah, when you read a book by a professor, they write in language which is very difficult to understand. So when Hamza said he's writing a book, and I was expecting it before I read it, I was expecting that this is going to be a absolute, nightmare to read. But I was surprised, pleasantly surprised. It was shockingly surprised because it was so easy to read. The beautiful thing about this book is that it covers deep theological and philosophical points, but it does it in such simple language, and it's accessible. And he uses, examples. He gives stories. Each chapter, each argument, he starts off with this type of analogy. It's sometimes in the form of a story, a little thought experiment, whatever it is. And it's powerful because if you just read the introduction of each chapter, you've got the gist of the argument, right? You don't have to read further, although you should, because he then breaks down the arguments in a very simple, logical way. So I guess what's beautiful about this book, and one of the amazing things Hamza has been able to achieve in The Divine Reality, is he's taken sometimes complex arguments, simplified the arguments, use simple language, but at the same time maintained its logical form. So it's brilliant. It's really, really amazing the way he's written this. So this is the one book if you're interested in atheism, philosophy, etc. Now, some other books, or which you may want to read if you're interested more in regards to atheism, the history of atheism, then this is one book that I've pretty much, really enjoyed reading, and it's full of information. And it's not that thick, and the author gets to the point. It's not full of fluff, right? Like most books, a lot of books have a lot of fluff. Normally you would have a book, the content will be in about this much of the book, but the rest of it will be just filler. This isn't one of those books. This is good because it gets to the point. It gives you a detailed breakdown of the history of atheism, how the origins of atheism, modern day new atheism, how it started, how it links in with the Enlightenment, how it, links in with modernity. It's a brilliant book, really, really good book from that perspective, full of information, useful information, in particular regards to atheism, but more specifically, the history of atheism. So this one's a good one. It's called, sorry, I didn't even tell you the title. It's by Alistair McGrath, and it's called The Twilight of Atheism, The Rise and Fall of Disbelief in the Modern World. Very, very good book to read as well. Recently started reading, I haven't finished it, although I remember reading this several years ago. Maybe didn't finish it then either, but is a biography of the Prophet ﷺ, which is the Sealed Nectar. I've got a pocket-sized version of this, and for some reason, when I started reading it this time, I've really been enjoying it. I love the way the author has broken down the biography into chunks. So you don't have, if you have a little time to read, you can just read a chunk and you can move on. And it's, again, something that stands out about this biography to me, brothers and sisters, is it's simple language, it's full of information, it's detailed, but it's not overly detailed. It's not going to give you a headache with too many facts and figures. It's got just enough. So it's a brilliant biography to read, based on, obviously authentic sources. And the author quotes his sources as well, so for further referencing, for further inquiry. There's a lot of references in this too. And going back to divine reality, although it's written simply, it's full of references. Hamza has like literally list of references in the back of the book that you guys can pick up on for further reading. What else? So this was another book that I haven't finished. I started reading and I made a post of this last week. It's one of those books that's really blown me away. Again, zero filler, as you guys can see. It's about this thick, but it's dense. And it's not dense in a difficult way. It's dense in a practical, simple way, meaning you can pick this up and you can read this and you can really easily digest the information. It's a book, it's called Islam at the Crossroads by Muhammad Assad. It's his analysis of Islam in the West and whether they're compatible or not, and the differences between the two. And, I haven't finished it. And again, when I'm recommending these books to you, it's not that I fully agree with what the author says. Or their conclusions, but it's interesting enough, and I feel from my perspective, he's someone that's done his research in regards to the modern world, in regards to Islam, and the way he even presents. So, for example, the way he even presents Salah. Keep in mind, this also takes into consideration a non-Muslim readership, probably predominantly, and the way he considers non-Muslims and the way he articulates certain base concepts of Islam, certain deep concepts of Islam, relevant concepts such as worship, such as the Salah, etc. It's done in a very beautiful way, and he was a phenomenal writer, Muhammad Assad. For those of you that don't know, he was a Austrian Jewish revert to Islam. Now, obviously, I know he had certain, he's done a translation of the Quran as well, which I have here, the message of the Quran. This translation here. Again, his writing is he was a journalist, so his writing, his English is brilliant. And I know he had certain views which we don't, or I don't agree with, and I'm sure most Orthodox Muslims don't agree with in regards to miracles, etc. But that being said, with all the shortcomings, he was someone who was a phenomenal writer, and someone that, like I said, he has had his finger on the pulse as far as understanding the world that he lives in. And it's important, brothers and sisters, something I want to put out there, which we shouldn't fall into, or the trap, is we shouldn't dismiss people because we don't agree with certain views that they hold. It's something that I've seen people do a lot. Okay, it's by this author, I'm not even going to pick the book up. I'm not even going to read it. And by doing this, we're really, short-circuiting ourselves. We really miss out on some valuable information. That being said, obviously, with the caveat, you need to, have a good, strong foundation and basis when you go into reading these books. Whether it be philosophy books or books written by certain Muslim authors who may hold certain theological views, you have to have your grounding in place. You have to have your foundations right. But don't dismiss people just because you've heard something about them. And this happens to a lot of us. I've fallen into this trap many times. But you have to go in cautiously, don't go in. Whenever you read books, whenever I try to read a book, something I try to do, and this is a habit I'm trying to get into, don't take everything on face value. Don't just be convinced by all of the author's conclusions. Question the author, challenge the author. It's a very powerful technique when you're reading, is don't read cover to cover trying to absorb all the information as it's presented to you. Challenge the author, have discourse with the author, whether they're alive or dead. Meaning, when you're reading what they're saying, and something I like doing is, say if I've read a couple of pages, before it becomes overwhelming and starts to really, weigh heavy on your head, close the book and really think about the concept that you've covered. Really think about the information that you've read and challenge it. Does it make sense? Is this in line with what you consider to be true? Where did the author go wrong? What points could the author have clarified a bit more? What points could the author have elaborated upon a bit more? What links would you make when you were talking about the same topic? So really engage with what's being said. It's very important, inshallah, when you're reading, because a lot of the times, and I had this big problem, because remember, I'm dyslexic as well. And one of the biggest, this issue was partly due to my dyslexia and partly due to the fact that I wouldn't read a lot. And I'm trying to get into the habit of reading more, is that we read and we don't retain. We read, and by the time we finish the session of reading, we've forgotten most of what we read. And there's ways of overcoming this. And one of the ways is to engage with the content. So pause after every few pages and really engage with the content and concepts that you've just picked up, and challenge them and reiterate them to yourselves if you're convinced by them. And that way you will see that the information will stick far better in your minds than it would if you weren't doing this. And the more books that you read, and I was talking to a brother about this earlier, brother Sirtaj from Austria, another brother, mashallah, who's really taken to reading, and he reads a lot more books than I do, mashallah. He told me earlier today that he finished 50 books last year, and these weren't just story books. These were like proper academic type, research material. And one of the things we were discussing and that we mentioned was we should, when you're reading, the more books you read, you should have a knowledge tree. Make a knowledge tree. So not only summarize the books that you read, and what he does is he writes summaries. So he reads a book and he summarizes the book in a few pages and he writes it down. That helps him hold on to a lot of the information that he's read. But another thing that we mentioned we should do is collate all the books in a knowledge map or a knowledge tree. And what I mean by this could be something you put on paper or on your head. But when you read different books on similar topics, for example, you will see that the author covers the same topics in slightly different ways and brings new arguments and points to the table. So when you read one book, you've got this piece of information in your head. You read another book on a similar topic, you got another piece of information in your head. Now try to reconcile them, right? Try to reconcile them and see what image emerges. And the more books you read, the more information you digest, the more you'll start to see that you're able to link different things different authors have said, and this 3D image emerges in your head in regards to whatever topic you're studying. It's like saying, if I give you an analogy, it's like having projectors, right? So imagine there's 3D projectors, and you read one book, you have one projector. You read another book, you got another projector. You read a third book, you got a third projector, and then a fourth and a fifth and sixth. Before you know it, you have this array of projectors, and they're all projecting an image, and they're all projecting into the center. And as they're projecting, it forms an image. And the more projectors you have, the more dimensions you get of that image. And until you get this really deep and detailed picture that emerges, this 3D image that emerges. And it's a very powerful way of sort of mapping information that you're reading and content and developing your concepts and ideas. So definitely do that. So that's something to, I guess, really helps you retain information, and not only retain it, but to develop an image of the concept and the ideas that you're reading about. Another book that I'm currently reading is this book. And again, I posted this the other day, Postmodernism and Islam. I don't know much about the author, to be honest. I don't know who the author is. His name is Akbar S. Ahmed. This is the first book I've read from him. But I've got to say, as far as the writing style, again, this is an academic book full of references. It's by Routledge. But again, to the author's credit, what he's done is he's written in a very easy, accessible style, very enjoyable to read, very easy to read. I finished the introduction in chapter 1, and very interesting. And what he's done in the first chapter is lay down the foundation. So what he's done is he's given an image of the West and an image of the Islamic world. And he's tried to write from, obviously he's Muslim, but he's tried to write from a more neutral perspective. And he sort of highlighted the pros and cons of both civilizations. And, he's tried to be as honest as possible. And he's highlighted, especially in recent times, one of the things he juxtaposes, and I think he makes a beautiful comparison of, is the misunderstanding between the West and the Muslim world, which is the West is misinformed in regards to Islam, the true Islam. And it hasn't done much, especially over the past couple of decades and centuries, to really inform itself better in regards to what Islam is. And on top of this, you've got the advent of modern media, which has really messed things up, because the media machine is there to literally create false dichotomies, to create villains and create heroes, and to create, this misrepresentation of Islam in particular, because the media is really taken to Islam. Something he highlights, the media is really taken to Islam and tried to make Islam the new baddie, basically, in the world. Especially in this postmodern age where, it's really created this type of this huge monster out of Islam. But at the same time, he highlights, and I think rightly so to a degree, which is that us Muslims, globally, we haven't done Islam justice. We haven't not only done Islam justice, but we haven't done justice to delivering the true message of Islam, something he mentions very clearly. And on top of this, to make things worse, what we've been very reactionary. Reactionary as far as the attacks that are made on Islam, and it's almost an aggressive type of reaction, not an intellectual reaction to these problems. And he's highlighted sometimes, some of the Muslim world has decided to completely shut itself off from what's happening in the world out there. And we tell ourselves, we have this perception, this idea in mind that, that the West is all bad and it's out to get us and all of this type of stuff. And we have these thoughts in our minds, and we're completely cut off. And then with the things that we're shown that Muslims are digesting through media, where the media does a good job of highlighting to Muslims as well, the atrocities that are taking place against Islam. And when we see these images and these things, they rile us up and we become angry, and rightly so. Some of the stuff and atrocities taking place against the Muslims, which we now pick up on social media as opposed to mainstream media. Sure, it makes our blood boil, it gets us angry, it upsets us. But he's saying, what he highlights is that our reactions in some cases are not called for. The way some Muslims, quote unquote, supposedly, people that represented Islam or representatives of Islam have reacted to these things. They've just further exacerbated the problem. The views that people have been led to believe through the media about Islam, they just further develop those false notions and ideas about Islam. So point being, it's interesting that he sets up this foundation to highlight there's problems on both sides, and the Muslims, we as an ummah have to sort of fix our own house as well from that perspective. And he highlights many atrocities that Muslims have committed against Muslims, and all of these issues that we've had, especially since the colonial powers went in and wreaked havoc on the Muslim world. And and he highlights that some Muslims took to or tried to take to modernism, some completely rejected it and tried to protect their culture. And how he highlighted also the way the Muslims that tried to take to modernity failed, right? And then it was almost what he's trying to suggest, it seems like, and I haven't read far enough to make a conclusive remark on this, but what it seems like he's highlighting is that Muslims too have experienced a type of postmodernism. And again, postmodernism is a gray area. It's a very difficult thing to define. It's because it's manifested in the arts, it's manifested in literature, it's manifested in philosophy, it's manifested in every sphere of life. So our social lives, every sphere of life. And it's more of a mood, it seems like, what's coming across, as opposed to a defined ideology. And the mood of, and against some of the academics he quotes, a type of mood which is of some academics refer to as panic, a panic state, chaos, confusion, all of these types of things. So, mashallah, brother Sabur has decided to join us in the office today. And he has a little lunchbox with him. I wonder what's in the lunchbox. Sabur, show us what's in your lunchbox, bro. What is it, chili sauce and bananas? Sabur just came in, alhamdulillah. So yeah, he highlights these, I've lost my trail of thought now, subhanAllah. Yeah, but anyway, he highlights that it's the Muslim world itself is experiencing a type of postmodernism because postmodernism is very difficult to define. That's where I was. It's a type of mood that some academics refer to it as a panic state that society is suffering from, the world is suffering from, a chaotic state, confusion. But an image that emerges even from the way he describes postmodernism is an image that is of an age where there are no definitives, there are no absolutes, there is no truth. What's true is what you want to believe is true, and the way you want to define it. There's an infinite number of ways of defining things. It's basically a type of chaos. There's a beautiful example he gives in the book where he says, referring to one author, where he describes postmodernism as, from a social real life perspective as a human being. It's like you wear French perfume, you shop at Marks and Spencer's, you eat McDonald's, you say certain religious slogans, and you're praying at the church, and you do it. It's a mix and mash of everything, basically, right? Anything type of goes. People are constructing their own ways of looking at reality and life and the way they're choosing to live. So this is the age. But he also highlights one last point I want to make about this, which I found was very interesting, because up until now, everything I've heard, or read about postmodernism, it seems like it's just, there's nothing in common in regards to postmodernism, Islam. There's no bridge. There's no way where we can sort of have that discourse. But he highlights that one thing that's positive that's come out of the postmodernist age is that they are turning back towards certain long lost virtues, such as that of tolerance, such as that of wanting to get to know one another, to get to know the other, to get to know about respect for people from different backgrounds and cultures. And he said this is a positive thing, and he also highlights that these virtues that they're realizing again are virtues that Islam holds, sacred. So it's a beautiful place where we can have that discussion with people from that background, or who may claim to be postmodernists or follow that philosophy, that and may encourage them towards Islam again, that look, here is something that not only speaks about these virtues, but at the same time will give you some closure. Because remember, as human beings, we don't like to be unstable, right? We don't like to be confused, and this is something that postmodernism does promote, which is this sense of nothing is for definite. There is no absolute truth. And you look at it specifically from the perspective of meaning and purpose. Well, again, what does it say about these things? It just, meaning is what you want to make it. The purpose of your life is what you want to make it. There is no absolute meaning to your being, to your existence. And these are the areas where people need stability. Human beings need stability. They need clarity. So Islam gives you that as well. And it's probably a good avenue for us to open up that discussion with people that may associate themselves more directly with postmodernism. But yeah, it's interesting so far. I haven't finished it. I'm enjoying reading it. So we'll see how this sort of reads further, inshallah. So yeah, those are the books I wanted to quickly share with you guys. I have loads of other books I haven't read. Inshallah, I hope to start reading at some point. But yeah, let me know in the comment section below what books you guys have been reading, or any books that you found quite interesting, inshallah. Brother Sirtaj did mention another book that I want to order and read. I might as well share it with you guys. Not that I'm recommending it. By the way, I'm just sharing what I've covered. I'm not recommending, other than the Divine Reality. I'm not endorsing any other book, right? I'm just saying these are books I'm reading. Maybe you'll find interesting if it's a topic that you enjoy. There's a book that Sirtaj mentioned. It's called The Island of Knowledge. It's by an atheist. And the full title is The Limits of Science and the Search for Meaning. So that sounds really appealing to me. So I may actually pick this up at some point. But I need to stop buying books before I finish reading books. So I'm probably going to hold off for a little while, inshallah. So yeah, definitely share any books that you guys have been reading. I'm just going to flick through if there's been any questions, and then we can wrap it up for today. So just bear with me, guys, inshallah. Someone said science is religion a few times. I'm not sure if that's a book or... So some of you guys have questions that we're gonna what we'll do is, like, for example, Fadi Games said about praying 5 to 10 times a day and engaging in sins and stuff. Those questions we'll address tomorrow, brothers and sisters, in the Q&A session with the brother Musa Adnan and Nadeem Ashraf, inshallah. But anything related to what you guys are reading or books we can pick up, I can sort of address here, inshallah. What's been added to the advised edition of Divine Reality? To be honest, I don't recall. I know there's bits he's added to it. Not much. Not much has changed. I know he's amended, slightly tweaked some of the arguments. But as far as full sections, let me just see if I can recall. Yeah, I can't remember top of my head what he's. I don't think he's added any big chapters or chunks, but he has. It's just small revisions and stuff that he's done, inshallah, to the Divine Reality. So Ibrahim says Muhammad Assad is a genius aside from his shortcomings. Absolutely. Look, I'll be honest. From what I've read, you know, he sounds like a European version of Iqbal, to be honest. And to be honest, I think they met. They knew each other. They had met in their lifetimes. And you can see that they shared a lot in common as far as their ideas and views and the way they understood. What really impresses me about both of them, more so than, you know, their ideas and the way they shared Islam, what impresses me more about their ideas and views is just the way they understood the world that they lived in. I mean, this is you seldom see this, brothers and sisters, honestly. Very few people really have a good grasp on, and I'm not saying well read as far as other disciplines are concerned, but understanding the world that we live in. What are we facing? What are we challenged with? What are the challenges to the da'wah? You know, how do we address them? Very few people are well read on these topics, and these guys, man, they had it down. They had it down really well. And secondly, the way they articulated Islamic concepts with in the case of Muhammad Assad, with a non-Muslim audience in mind, and in the case of Iqbal, with a Muslim audience in mind that was in need of a type of revival. The way they sort of addressed the audience is powerful. Obviously, Iqbal was a poet, and you know, he was on another level from his perspective in the way he communicated certain ideas. And again, just to caveat that, doesn't mean they didn't have their shortcomings. Absolutely not. You know, doesn't mean they had views that you may not agree with. Absolutely not. You know, every human being has their shortcomings. And these individuals too had their shortcomings in regards to certain things, as do all of us. You know, so that being said, they were geniuses in their own right as far as, you know, their areas of speciality and the way they engaged with the world. And you know, they were du'at. You know, I would consider them people that were focused on delivering the message of Islam, one focusing on the Muslims and the other seems to be focusing on Muslims as well as non-Muslims as well. And with Assad, you really feel the passion he has to inform his community, his people, you know, the Europeans, about the true message of Islam. And remember, at his time, there was very little good information about Islam, authentic, genuine information about Islam around. You know, so you can see it in his work and his writings. Even his book, I started reading his biography, The Road to Mecca. Guys, I'm telling you, if you want to read a book that reads like a movie, literally, yeah, and that's what we're used to these days. But if you want to read a book that you really get immersed in and you lose yourself in, he is a phenomenal writer, honestly. His book, The Road to Mecca, is written in a beautiful way. You know, I haven't finished it, so I don't know what the conclusion is going to be. I don't know what the whole gist of the book is, but it's written it's a phenomenal book. I mean, it's better than any novel you can read. Honestly, it's really, really good. But yeah, anyway, that was a bit about them. Yeah, so social stigmatists mentioned Iqbal's book, The Reconstruction of Islamic Thought, also comes to mind. I think it's called Reconstruction of, that book. I tried to read it. I tried to read it a few years ago. I just couldn't wrap my head around it. And you have to remember, he's written for a certain audience. That book is written for an audience which already has a good grounding in certain themes and topics and subjects. But there are for the Urdu speaking audience, there is a really good lecture series online. I'll try to find the link and share with you. If I don't do it today, I'll probably do it tomorrow, where they've broken down reconstruction of religious thought into video form lectures where they really explain the concepts and ideas. So that I found really useful. But with Iqbal, you have to be careful. The thing is, you sometimes look, putting aside the fact that some of his views may not be orthodox and you may not agree with them, absolutely put that aside. But even when you read his stuff, which may be legit, sometimes on initial reading, you're taken back. And Sheikh Fahd mentioned this as well. You're taken back and you're like, whoa, this ain't right. But when you read it and you try to understand what he's saying, then you get the angle he's taking. But you have to be careful, with whatever you read. Obviously, aside from the Quran and the Sunnah and the narrations of the Prophet ﷺ, and the classical scholars, obviously that too within. I guess what I'm getting at, brothers and sisters, we have to look. There's two extremes of this. We always fall into extremes. The one extreme is that don't read and study anything else other than our traditional sources and texts, and the other extreme is read everything else and take everything else as it is. Yeah, so you don't want to fall into both of these categories. Like we mentioned many times, have that strong foundational grounding in your own tradition, and then when you read books which you feel will be useful. Like from my perspective, I always have tried to have the dawah hat on, right? I'm just always thinking, okay, what can I read and study which is going to be beneficial for the dawah? And then these topics such as postmodernism, modernism, atheism, all of these topics, these books that you read them, but read them, like I said before as well, to re-emphasize the point, read them not with the intention of absorbing everything the author has said in the way the author has intended it to be understood, absorbing all of the views of the author as they are. No, you don't want to take this. Have the approach of critically challenging these authors and their views. And along the way you will gain a lot, and along the way you will drop a lot as well, and along the way you will develop your own thinking, your own critical thinking about these things. So it's powerful to read. We should read, definitely. But first and foremost, obviously, we have to spend time on our own tradition as well, inshallah, and studying that to the best of our ability. So someone was studying what books to read, and this came up. This ain't extensive, brothers and sisters. What I'll do is every few weeks I'll just share some books that I'm probably covering or have read that come to mind, and I'll share them with you, inshallah. So the intention here wasn't to give you everything, just a few books that recently have triggered me. Another book that comes to mind, brothers and sisters, if you can get hold of it, is the translation of Tafsir al-Jalalain by, I think, Darul Taqwa Publications. That is a very, very nice. It's one volume. It's about this thick. It's the translation of Jalalain, but what they've done is they've removed all of the grammatical explanations just to make it simple. So that's if you want a tafsir of the Quran in English, that's short, one volume, that gives you a good understanding of the Quran and the context of the ayat and the context of revelation and all of these things. That is a brilliant translation. It's Tafsir al-Jalalain by, I think, Darul Taqwa Publications. It's one volume. You can get it. It's hardback. That's really, really good. I've been reading that recently. It's very, very good, inshallah. Yeah, knowledge trees. Call it whatever you want. I call it a knowledge tree, or the idea is to bring knowledge together, and it's very good because sometimes authors will write about things and cover topics in a way which won't be true, or you may not agree with. And when you have the knowledge tree, when say 5 authors have spoken about one topic in a certain way, and the 6th one talks about it in a totally different way, well, it's almost induction, right? Or it's I guess a scientific approach to taking in information, where you're going to go with where most of them are going, where most of them are falling towards. It's a very powerful way of really reconciling everything you've learned and really coming to a clearer picture about what actually happened. So it's a very powerful way of doing it, inshallah. So I know it's not directly related. This brother's asking questions. I was debating with someone, and they claimed that using logic to search for truth is pointless because logic is merely an assumption. I disagree with him. What do you think? Well, I don't know. If someone rejects logic, the first thing I got to ask them is, if you reject logic, whatever that is, we don't want to get into the definition of this, but if you reject human rational faculties, which, logical faculties have the ability to understand things, well, then how do you come to the understanding that truth exists, or there is a thing that we call truth? How can you understand what truth is? So it's self-defeating, I think, because you won't be able to grasp the concept of truth if you didn't have logic. You wouldn't even have to be able to have a discussion with someone, quote unquote, a logical discussion with someone, if you didn't believe or accept logic, or formulate any beliefs, come to any beliefs. How would you do that if you didn't have the use of the akal, the intellect? So that's how I'll probably respond to it, or something I'd ask them. Okay. Yeah, I'll try. It's just I'm very limited with time, brothers and sisters. So I'll try to put the titles in the description, but I'll just show them to you once again. So it's The Divine Reality by Hamza Zortzis. Then we've got The Sealed Nectar. The Sealed Nectar by Sheikh Safi Rahman Al Mubarakpuri. It's published by Darus Salam, this one here. The other one is The Twilight of Atheism, The Rise and Fall of Disbelief in the Modern World. This is by Alistair McGrath. Then the other book was by Muhammad Assad. It was Islam at the Crossroads. And the other book I shared with you guys was Postmodernism and Islam by Akbar S. Ahmed. So these were the books, just so you guys can, inshallah, take the titles from there. So apologies if I'm not able to put them in the description. Okay. So brothers and sisters, I see you guys have some other questions as well. We'll address them tomorrow. Please join the live stream tomorrow at 5 p.m. inshallah. I'll put it on the community section of this page so you guys can go and just click the notification. So before we go live, you'll be notified, inshallah. Your brother Muhammad Hadib is saying Twilight of Atheism is a good book. SubhanAllah. It is. It's really good. One volume. Someone's saying, Yusha is saying, I just purchased Twilight of Atheism. Alistair McGrath, as far as I'm aware, is a Christian. So you've got to keep that in mind as well. He's approaching this from a Christian perspective, although he's very academic. And when I say academic, I mean neutral. So he's not speaking like a Christian, at least not for majority of the book. So it's good from that perspective, inshallah. Yeah. Sealed Nectar is a must-read. Brother Muhammad Adib is saying, yeah, absolutely. It's really good. Especially the pocket-sized version. I'm quite picky with the book sizes. I love pocket-sized books, especially ones that you can read where the text isn't too small. So this is really nice because it's this small, but it has, the text is a decent size. So you guys can read it comfortably. Alhamdulillah. What software are you using for streaming? Brother Muhammad is asking. I'm using StreamYard. So I've got StreamYard. That's what I'm using, inshallah. Yeah, someone's saying Muhammad by Martin Lings is also brilliant. Yeah, absolutely. Especially for non-Muslim readers, that's a really good book. It's written really well as well, the biography. But it's not as detailed, as far as I remember, not as detailed as the Sealed Nectar. Although the Sealed Nectar isn't like a super detailed biography either, but it's more, it has more. What do I think about Road to Mecca? So far, I haven't gone through much of it. I've just probably read about 30, 40 pages. So far, I really like it, to be honest. I like the introduction. The forward was good. And yeah, it's just, his experience. He was a very spiritual individual. He writes, like, he captures his that spirituality in his writing. It's very powerful. Like the examples he gives of being in the desert, and the way he shifts, man, it's powerful. It's like I said, it's like a movie. He'll be experiencing something in the present, where is the present in the book, and then he'll shift to a past experience, and he does it so seamlessly and in such a beautiful way because it's linked in some way. It's very, very powerful the way he does it. It's just a really enjoyable. If you like reading novels, if you like reading storybooks and autobiographies, The Road to Mecca is a definite read for, especially for non-Muslims as well, inshallah. Okay, guys, so we'll wrap up for today, inshallah. May Allah bless you. Like I said, I will probably do another book review at some point, or not a review, but a book recommendation type video. So yeah, inshallah, this was another book I just noticed that I started reading last week, but then I got intrigued by the other ones and stopped reading. Saladin by John Mann. I read a bit of it. I really like the way the author writes, but I can't say anything else about it because I haven't read enough of it. It's about, obviously, Salahuddin al-Ayyubi and his life, and yes, I'm looking forward to at some point continuing to read this, inshallah. But yeah, if books ain't your thing, then audiobooks, there's so many available on Audible and stuff like this these days as well, inshallah. So there's loads of avenues for everyone, inshallah. So yeah, Jazakallah khair, brothers and sisters, and I will catch up with you tomorrow, 5 p.m. UK time, with Brother Nadeem Ashraf and Brother Musa Adnan. So if you have any other questions, because you had some questions there, maybe you want to bring them tomorrow and we can have that discussion, inshallah. Jazakallah khair. Assalamu alaikum. Take care, guys.